Here on the Creative Thinker Podcast, we discuss all theories, philosophy, and thought behind the creative process. And we hope that you find some inspiration along the way.
Hello and welcome to the Creative Thinker Podcast. Welcome back to part 2 of our Dragon series. My name is Henry Moon and I am joined by
Michael Vasquez.
You've done a ton of research for this part 2, so I'm going to be turning it off to you, handing it over to you mainly for this episode. We're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Yeah. So we're going to be entering into the world of D&D, and I think as a preface, and some of the research that I was doing, the videos that I was watching, they also made this preface that when we're talking about the Draconic Pantheon, that it is more vast and wide than just one setting. So there are going to be a lot of different settings here, or we're going to try and focus just on the most recent Dungeons and Dragons edition, and we're going to talk about I think it's called Faerun or you know whatever the most recent edition.
Faerun.
Yeah, and so but there's the Greyhawk setting, there's the Dragonlance setting. So each of these might be a little bit different. So for the research that I did, and the videos I watched were maybe like 2 years old. So that's
5e for days still.
Yeah, still 5e for sure. Use it however you want to, because it is still really, really dope. So like Henry said, we're gonna be talking about dragon deities, and then we'll be talking about black dragons in particular. Wanted to hit the deities because we just talked about mythology in our last episode, and it's very interesting to see how much of the mythology is going to be coming together in a certain sense. So with that, are you ready to
Through the
dive in?
crucible of J.R.R. Tolkien, right?
Yeah, right.
I can't wait, honestly. After going through all the mythology, I was like, I can't even, like, my brain is melting. I can't even picture this in a game anymore. So I'm really excited to see how this applies back to D&D, because I haven't played since we did our last episode, so I'm just sort of checking out how we can play. What you drinking, Michael?
I'm drinking a Black Rifle coffee because we're gonna need it here.
Heck yeah. I'm also drinking coffee, but it's from my kitchen.
All right, so talking about dragon deities. Like I said, the Draconic Pantheon is vast and wide. What that means is there are a handful of dragon deities. We're going to be focusing on one in particular, and then two lesser deities, right? So where am I at? Okay, we're talking about Io. Io is the creator of the dragons, and it is very important for us to know here that dragons are they view this mythology as their own. So we are going to view the mythology that we talk about today that as a dragon would view this mythology. As your own game, you might have a different pantheon that is actually the creator of your world. Dwarves are going to think they had a different creator. Elves are going to think they had a different creator. Dragons are going to think they are the creators of all of this, right? Because they're arrogant and they're prideful. All dragons are. So we have one creator because we're taking the POV of the dragons. So dragons also will not tolerate views that are different from theirs when it comes to the creation of the multiverse. And Io is the creator of this multiverse. Not just one world, because we are talking about different settings. Io is so strong, so powerful, that they created all the multiverses. They created Greyhawk. They created Dragonlance. They created the worlds that you're in and the worlds that I play my D&D games in.
I see. I didn't know that. I thought Tiamat was like the highest one.
Tiamat and Bahamut are going to be the two most common dragon deities, but they are lesser deities, which we're still going to touch on them, and I will give some of the names of the other dragon deities. And like I said, there's just so much history here and mythology. I took a lot of my research from AJ Pickett. He's a YouTuber who has a lot of D&D material, and the Dragonomicon, the one that was on the DM's Guild. So it's the most recent Dragonomicon for 5e. And I was showing Henry before we started that this is 250 pages plus of just dragon lore, dragon deity lore, famous dragon lore, stat blocks for each one of those things, and it's just there's so much information.
And it's
We're
beautiful. Like it's
Oh
definitely
yeah,
it's worth the money for sure. I hadn't seen it before. I never even heard of it actually. So
yeah.
just seeing it was like the art was really good. The
Mhm,
layout was like the presentation's fantastic. So
mhm.
definitely money well spent there. I couldn't, sorry, continue.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. So all this is a preface to starting with Io, also known as Asgaroth, the World Shaper, deity of creation, the concordant dragon, the great eternal wheel, swallower of shades, the ninefold dragon, creator of dragonkind. In the beginning, there was the first void, and within that, there was Io. And in the void, there was a shadow void, which contained Io's mirror self. Uh, I'm going to do my best to say this name Chronopis, who is Null, who is also known as the Death Worm, the Reaver, the Guardian of Lost, Silent, the Watcher, which I think is a very cool term for this dragon because there's the Watcher in MCU when they do the What If. I think it's very interesting because it's this kind of further, kind of extra, I don't know, larger than life creature, also known as the Night Dragon and the Draconic Skull. Io and Chronopis come together from both ends of time, and when they finally and first meet, was both the beginning and the end. Chronopis brought the multiverse empty to Io, and Io breathed life and potential into the multiverse. As Io formed the circle of eternity, he became aware of all the future events and instantly knew every spell that would ever exist and became the true source of all the most powerful magic in the multiverse. So, that is the creation story of Io and Chronopis. This is what dragons believe to be how the world came to view. What do you think about that?
I think that's crazy. I think that's the first time I've heard a creation story where the same character was both good and evil. That
Hmm.
this is, the reason for the fight between good and evil is because it both exists. It both exists in the God of the universe, the
Hmm.
creator, right? And I think that that's really interesting because that's so much of D&D is playing off of your character's core attributes, and so one of those things is like, are you chaotic good? Are you
Yeah.
neutral? Whatever. Um, and the idea that for whatever reason it didn't occur to me in D&D because you try to stick to your character, where it's
Yeah.
like both of those things exist in harmony to some extent, and each situation you find yourself in is somewhere along that gradient, and that's sort of based on one singular creator, because like Christianity and all that stuff, most religions are like uh the good and you're chasing the good, and then evil exists off in this dirty realm where
Hmm.
anytime you partake in that, you're disgusting.
Yeah.
And having it wrapped up in one character, I think, negates that, where it's almost like the guilt is gone. Like it happens sometimes, maybe that's not the goal, but
Hmm.
that's both halves of the same coin. I just think that that's a really interesting creation myth in general. That's
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah, I think it is again talking about, you know, Christianity and the belief, like, that God is always there and always has been, right? This view of Io and Chronopis, because when they talk about when they meet, it's the cycle. I think I didn't use that word, but
Cycle of infinity or something like
I
that.
said in the beginning, in the first void cycle, within that there was Io. I was like, oh wow, that's even more crazy because within this first cycle of the void, the same creature meets itself, and time is just so wild, right? From the beginning and the end of time, they come together and they meet both for the first and last time. Which how far are you in Attack on Titan?
I'm like 3 episodes from the end of the first season.
Okay,
Not far.
there's some weird time stuff that happens towards the end of Attack on Titan, and there is a character who starts to go a little bit crazy because they towards the end now are experiencing everything, the entire series, at the same time over and over and over again because of the lore of Attack on Titan. So whenever they are making a decision now at this point, they're seeing how everything else led to this decision, not even in just this life, but in other people's lives. This person continued to push people and is actively doing this pushing to make this things happen. So when you start thinking about time, it's like, oh my gosh, like can multiple things be happening at the same time? This was an interesting creation story. They come together after all the experience of time coming to the beginning and almost restarting. Oh, it's so cool. So
Yeah.
cool.
And it's also sort of like what Halo does in a different way, which is, yeah, it's interesting just seeing in Mass Effect 2, where it's like the cycles of life
Mhm.
are represented in time, even though as we experience it, it's not a cyclical thing.
Right.
And that the fact that it might be is crazy. Yeah,
Mhm.
it is.
Makes you question a lot of
Too
stuff.
big to think about.
So then, as we're talking about Io and this creation, just an interesting fact. If you are more involved in D&D, you might know the world or the plane of Sigil. It's apparently like this neutral area where law is very strict, and if you disobey or don't do any of the laws, and again, if I'm getting this wrong, sorry, I didn't do research on Sigil. um, then there is a creature called the Lady of Pain, and it's supposed to be like this kind of bigger than life creature that comes down and like smites you if you do wrong. Dragons believe the Lady of Pain was created through this creation process, and that it was a part of Io that created the Lady of Pain. Because one of Io's, and this is interesting that you talked about, good and evil. One of Io's names is the Ninefold Dragon. The reason it's called the Ninefold Dragon is because if you look at the pie chart of good, evil, neutral, chaotic, lawful, and was the other
Good?
one?
Oh,
Good.
no. Evil? Chaotic,
Yeah.
lawful, and evil?
Yeah. Whatever the alignments are, Io Asgaroth is all of those. So it's very interesting. Every dragon that worships Io feels like Io is the essence of what their uh, alignment is. So it plays all these different things, which I think, again, it is very, very interesting.
And very versatile. I mean, that's what you want if you're playing off of anything. It's like, yeah, especially if you have a deity in your game, then it's like you want to be able to pull out surprises. You want to be able to use that as a tool to do anything, but also have a familiar character to do it with. And
Yeah.
I think, yeah, the way that they're setting this up is pretty cool.
Io is so huge in the lore that one scale is larger than any dragon that has ever existed. Larger than the stellar dragons, which is not included in the Dragonomicon. Stellar dragons can reach as long as 568 miles long. One scale of Asgaroth, right? This is what dragons believe. This is the most powerful being. It is so powerful, in fact, that the aspect of Io has only ever come into existence at the creation. And if Io, Asgaroth, was ever to land on a planet, because in most D&D settings, the planets are their own planes, and then there's space, which is also Io. If it were to land on a planet, it would be an extinction level event for the entire planet and everything on that planet, which is mind boggling, right? Imagine being so powerful that you come down to a planet and everything is just destroyed just by your mere presence, So, there is only one time that it has been an aspect of Asgaroth. And if you don't know what an aspect of is, it's whenever like a deity presents itself in a form that can be around people, because most times deities in D&D, just their mere presence is going to cause an effect on the players or the people around it. So if you were to say get into the presence of Paylor, for example, which I know Paylor is in our game, you should theoretically almost be burning up, because I believe Pelor is like the god of the sun or something. So like its actual presence of Pelor would be devastating to you. So they create an aspect which is like a little
Like a projected form or something like
yeah,
that.
but it's still a physical form. It's still a physical projected form. I can't think of the word aside from aspect of. And so its aspect is so strong that it's only been created once. So yeah, this thing is super super powerful. Dragons believe that Io is the one who created the multiverse. They created all of the different planes. Like I said, it's the creator. Asgaroth doesn't manifest itself to any of its worshippers, even if it creates an aspect on itself, and like I just talked about, would be an extinction level event. Yep, we hit this. Sorry, going through my notes. Oh, interesting. Whenever Io wants to talk to any creature, it brings it into a dreamlike state and pulls it from wherever it's at into an astral projection so that it can speak with it. But Io also has the ability to take the form of any dragonoid, any dragon kind, anywhere, and manifest or kind of talk through that that body, that dragon creature. But in the research, it's like, but why would he do it? Because literally, Asgaroth is omnipresent, and because it created the multiverse is its body. So it is aware and present of everything that is going on everywhere. And that's scary. That's scary to have that dragon have that ability to go anywhere, do anything, and if it were to show its present, would just smite everything and anything around you.
And that'd be the equivalent of like your conscious mind talking to a cell in your toe and just being like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you had that level of awareness, like you'd go crazy. There's just no way to handle all that information. And that's why there's so many automated parts in our nervous system, let alone in our brain.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and cells even have their own little brains. But anyway, so that is the scale we're talking about. And the level of awareness to be like, yeah, it's zipping up proteins inside a cell. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Anyway, so it would be able to talk to any piece of that information with the full weight of its consciousness. And just to hear that voice, I'm sure would have some damage on the character that heard it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So just the fact that it takes another form to be in the presence, it's like you can't even hear its actual voice. He has to take another form just to speak to you. So a lot of really interesting stuff to play off of there. And another way to like have your characters visit with, especially if they're high enough level where that's the kind of people they're running into. If they visit with Io in multiple occasions, not only will they have never truly met Io, but they won't necessarily even know that it's Io every time because it's a different physical presence.
So, and also another interesting thing that you're saying, like even visiting Io, it doesn't happen. Io has, again, this is where it gets really complicated because there is a lot of descendants of Io. One of them being, or two of them, sorry, being Bahamut, Tiamat, and Null, which is crazy because Null was also the one that was itself in the future that met it at the beginning. So kind of, dragon lore gets real weird and quirky. But Io has an offspring that is the messenger, and I think that offspring is supposed to be like a jokester deity and like the god of jester. And so, like, it's not supposed to be a dragon that's ever really taken seriously. But when Io needs to send a message, this dragon will go and take the message wherever it needs to. Io does not leave his space. It sends people so that people have to come to him,
Yeah. Kind of like a Loki character, right? Like he's got a...
Yeah.
And it's really funny to me that he has basically the court jester go send his messages. Like... we have a non-serious character show up to send what is the most serious message you'll probably get as a character in D&D, right?
Yeah, for real.
That is, I don't know. That's so funny.
Yeah. So that's that is Io in a nutshell, because Io is the creator. Io is the one that is the the dragon creator. It created the universe. Everything that I've said already. Do you have any questions about Io before we move on to the two most famous, or at least I feel like the most famous children of Io going into Bahamut and Tiamat? And we're just gonna touch briefly on those two.
How does Io have kids? Like, what is the? Did they talk about the process at all?
So this is where it gets interesting, because there is different lore depending on, I guess, the time frame that we're talking about. So there is another dragon deity called Tamara, and Tamara is, give me a second so I can look at my dragon notes because I have it here.
Like Io's girlfriend or something?
Kind of. She's like the mother in some stories of Bahamut and Tiamat, as well as I believe Null and a couple other of the dragon deities. So let me see. So Tamara is the lesser deity of life and light, and she is known as her beneficence and her mercy. She is the kindest and most loving of all dragon deities. She balances Lendi's, I think that was an abbreviation for another dragon, Lendi's justice with her compassion. Tamara and her followers are bringers of life, light, and mercy, as well as relief from evil and tyranny, but also death and destruction against those who are unjust or undead. So,
Interesting.
Io and Tamara have kiddos. And those kiddos, however you want to think of it, those kiddos are Bahamut and Tiamat. And again, all of these dragons have aspects of Asgaroth because it is the ninefold dragon. So it takes on all of these. So Tiamat can have good conversations with Io, and Bahamut can also have good conversations with Io about Tiamat. Bahamut, and we'll get into it here in a little bit, Bahamut often has conversations with Io saying what Tiamat is doing is wrong, but Io does not intercede. Io has created everything, and now he just sits back and relaxes. And if it ever needs to intercept or intrude into a conflict, it's not going to be good.
That's so interesting. Like, so the mythology around Tiamat was that basically Tiamat was the Io level, if I recall correctly, was the Io level dragon. Like, this was the god of, and then it created, like, magically and through gathering materials, it created babies.
Are you talking about like real world mythology?
Uh-huh.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then those babies fought with each other, and then she had to basically create monsters, and I forget the other mythological creatures that she makes, then to fight her own children. And somewhere in there, she gets killed, I believe. Tiamat dies. But anyway, that's like the real world thing. So that's why I'm asking about the creation, because I'm wondering how much they took from the actual mythology and how much they just. But yeah, to have. There's always, when you have a being that powerful, there's always intercession. And it seems like Io has a lot of intercession. There's his wife, I guess. And then there's his messenger, and
Mate
then there's
would be more of the word, not wife.
mate. Okay. And then there's his projected form. Like, everything about him is like, you can't be anywhere near him, so he needs intercession to be anywhere near a character. So, I mean, if your characters made it to the level of planes, maybe they would be a little bit better, but...
Yeah, it would still be a tough... I think when you're talking to Io, or if you're talking to Io, this is, like I said, extinction level event. Like, this is a last-ditch effort to go and grab Io if you have to, as a player character, at some point, have to have a conversation with Io, I feel like.
Like, it's 10 steps above a wish spell.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah, so like I said, the two other deities that we're going to talk about, they're a little bit more commonly known. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about them, because, again, the back half of this podcast, we're really going to focus into the black dragons to really give you some nitty gritty on that. And there are so many different videos on Bahamut, Tiamat. There's a whole campaign setting for Tiamat called Rise of the Dragon Queen. And I think that's 2 books from Wizard of the Coast that go over Tiamat getting out of Avernus, I believe. I've never played through them, so don't at me. So yeah, and then Bahamut. I mean, there are countless videos that go into the nitty gritty. We're just doing a basic overview of these two, and as we're doing a basic overview of these two, I will go ahead and say some of the other deities' names. So just so you have an idea that there is still a handful of deities. Astranon, that would be the messenger deity, the jester one. Astilabor, which is the domain of Arcana. Gyrax, which I feel like is a throwback to Gary Gygax and mixing his name up together, the founder of D&D. And that is they're over the domain of Death, Forge, Grave, Light, and War. Gargolothor, Halal, Carestra, Lendis, Noel, Sardor, Tiamat, Tosk, Bahamut, and I think those are all the major deities, right?
These names are wild.
Ran through them real quick, right? You look up dragon deities, and there's even more, right? So I had these, and then in my research, I was like, oh my gosh, they're listing out more dragon deities right now. This is crazy. So there's a lot, and where they all come from, again, where do dragon deities come from? Evan, thanks for the question. They come from Io, and Io just makes it happen, either with a mate or without a mate. It depends on what lore that you're looking at. With that being said, any other questions before we dive into Bahamut and Tiamat?
None whatsoever. Let's get it.
Here we go. Bahamut, king of all good dragons. They are lawful good. Their portfolio or domain is over good dragons, metallic dragons, wisdom, enlightenment, and justice. Justice tempered with mercy and punishment with forgiveness. So
that Bahamut is a lot more like his mom, right? What's her name one more time?
Tamara.
Tamara. Yeah. So Bahamut is like Tamara. It's like mother's boy or whatever.
Yeah,
mama's
exactly.
boy. There you go.
And now we're gonna go on another tangent. Side note. There are two types of dragons in D&D that are the base dragons, right? We have our chromatic dragons and we have our metallic dragons. Our metallic dragons are the good dragons, and now that I say that, I don't have a list of the metallic dragons.
Copper, gold, silver, bronze. Right?
This sounds close.
Platinum dragon.
We got gold dragon, we got silver dragon, bronze, copper, and brass.
Ooh,
and then
I was wrong.
Yeah, you were close. You were very close. Right, so those are the 5 metallic dragons, and then we have our chromatic dragons, which are red, blue, green, white, and black. Right, that was the last one. I didn't say that one yet.
Yes.
So we got 10 dragon types. How did they come to chromatic and metallic dragons? From what I can tell, is D&D first edition created the 5 chromatic dragons first. Those are the evil dragons, and the one good dragon was the gold dragon. And then in the editions coming after that, they needed to make more good dragons, so they created metallic dragons from the gold dragon. That is all I could tell in my research on how, the difference is like the metallic are good aligned, the chromatic are evil aligned typically.
So then the metallic ones are descendants of Bahamut?
Yes, you could assume they're descendants of Bahamut. And then chromatic dragons are descendants of Tiamat. And Tiamat is the queen of all evil dragons. So she takes delight in all the evil dragons that are there, and all the chromatic dragons, which Tiamat is a 5-headed dragon that has the heads of all 5 of those chromatic types of dragons.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't even remember. I think she had 2 heads mythologically. I can't even remember, but it's so funny hearing how different it is. It's almost like Greek gods talking about Tiamat in mythology, where it's like, okay, now these demigods are fighting, and now I have to step in and create, the Minotaur and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's almost a mirror of Greek gods. I know it isn't, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that, and then this is like, it's not that at all.
Yeah.
Starting to freak my brain out, but it's really cool. It's really cool. I didn't realize Bahamut was the god of good dragons,
Mhm.
and that Tiamat was evil dragons.
Yeah.
Um,
And then
I've seen minifigures of Tiamat a lot of times, and I'm like, I don't even know what that is, but it looks awesome.
oh, dude, the mini like Tiamat as a miniature looks dope. A 5-headed dragon. That's
It's
why.
huge too.
Ow, but yeah, I've seen some people get the minis, and they're just. I thought about bringing my dragon minis here for today, but they're huge miniatures, just regular ones, and Tiamat's supposed to be even bigger than that. And if you're buying miniatures, Tiamat is like typically a $300 unpainted and more painted if you want to buy it that
Whoa.
way. So it's a very expensive, and you might be able to find it cheaper, but the good quality ones that I found seem to be quite expensive, which is why I don't have one.
That's crazy.
um, so back onto Bahamut. Like I said, there are two different stories of how it got birthed. One is just being a child of Asgaroth, and the other one is being the son of Tamara and Asgaroth. Um, Bahamut is stern and discerning of evil. Again, always arguing with Asgaroth against evil, and they do not tolerate evil acts from evil aligned creatures. Most dragons tend to not interfere into the material plane, but Bahamut does because he cares for the humanoids. He has a soft spot for them, and he will also. Most dragons don't need or want clerics, and Io doesn't want clerics because Io's divinity is in each dragon. So Io doesn't need clerics. But some of these other dragons can give power to clerics and paladins, and Bahamut is one that does that. Sorry, I'm looking up here so that I could get my thoughts correct.
Look wherever you need to.
Yeah, so he
Find them wherever they're at.
Bahamut is definitely one of those that can that pushes for paladins, pushes for clerics because it likes the humanoids as well.
That's really interesting. So yeah, it's only second generation that we start having deities that are invested in our character's progression,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
which is really interesting considering the amount of intercedence that Io needs. That we just go one step down.
Well, even then, so and I didn't put it here, but in research for Bahamut, Bahamut has, and you guys know this, in my campaign, because in my campaign I killed Bahamut. Bahamut
Thanks
has
so much.
yeah, no problem, guys. Bahamut has 7 gold, ancient, like super ancient gold dragons protecting it, and those dragons typically take the forms of like little I can't remember what the birds are, but like the little chick birds.
Sparrows or something, or
Yeah,
like
they're super small birds, and Bahamut typically will take the form of
chickadee.
chickadees.
There
Yeah.
we go.
And Bahamut will typically take the form of a small older man and walk on the material plane. So
Oh wow.
yeah, Bahamut is literally like in it. He's always around. And then the way that I played the 7 protectors is they also had different abilities. The protectors of Bahamut are the only dragons that Bahamut doesn't keep an eye on, which is why in my campaign the protectors are the ones who took Bahamut down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super interesting. And yeah, do you have any more that you're going to talk to about the protectors? Like, is there any other lore attached to them?
I can't remember. I think I made something like they each had some type of domain that they were in charge of, and I can't remember. It's in my DM screen, so
Wild.
maybe I can take a picture of that when I get home. But they have, yeah, I don't think I wrote it down on my notes, but yeah, they all had different things that they were in charge of. So like in the Great Dawn War, when uh the titans and giants were fighting against the dragons, and these deities are fighting and things like that. These protectors, some of them were generals, some of them had like these crazy magical abilities and were able to take on and protect Bahamut during this war.
Yeah, I just think it's really interesting how, I mean, we're talking about generations and deities, but
Mhm.
still how the generations change their role in our players. is just so interesting. And just to have somebody that's only one step down from Io that is around every day, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy. And then so it's like, what do his helpers do? Like he's there, he's in it, he does everything. So
Mhm.
so what do they even do?
And
You
it's,
know?
and some of the lore is contradicting because some of the lore says, Bahamut is on the material plane. He is walking around with his protectors. Some of the lore says he spends most of his time in Olympus or in the presence of Io talking about.
Olympus is in D&D. Wow. What?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Mount
Okay.
Olympus is 100% D&D lore.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And let me stop asking unrelated questions. That's nuts. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Continue. Sorry.
All the pantheons are in D&D lore. It just depends. And in D&D lore, you're all on the cosmos, and that's what spell jamming is being able to move from different areas to different areas. So each planet has its own sphere, and then to spell jam, you can take a ship and literally go to another planet, which could be another D&D setting. So you could literally come to Earth in one of your D&D settings, and then from there you can travel to like another planet and you'd be in Dragonlance, or you could travel to another planet, you'd be in the Witcher setting, or you'd be in the Narnia setting, or whatever. Like there's different ways that you can play it. Of course, they say every person's own game is its own sphere, so theoretically anything can happen anywhere through spell jamming.
Wow, that's wild. That's such a cool way to do it too, because then it's like every game that you play, no matter what your variation is part of D&D lore. It's canonical immediately, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which is why DM tip. That's why every game I play, I take part of it and incorporate it into my D&D world that I run, because there are aspects of all the D&D settings that are supposed to kind of move cross campaign, which I think is very interesting, because sometimes you'll be hitting notes for other players and you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. How did this happen here? And it's because of this kind of spell jamming mess that happens.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Back to Bahamut. Thank you for that. That was for me. Sorry,
Yeah.
listeners, for hijacking Bahamut's conversation. But
No, you're good. You're good.
Michael,
I mean,
you nailed it.
honestly, that was kind of the end of Bahamut. Bahamut's also known as the Platinum Dragon. Pardon me.
Interesting.
So that's Bahamut. He's this giant silver platinum dragon for good.
Let's
But
get to the good
now
one.
we'll talk about his sister, Tiamat. I almost called her Auntie Tia. Because I play in a game where we are Tiamat's tots, and we play as little chromatic dragons or evil dragons, and we're in Tiamat's part of Tiamat stuff. So now let's get into the nitty gritty. Tiamat, the Dragon Queen, queen of all evil dragons, the Dark Lady, nemesis of the gods, queen of chaos, the undying queen, the Viscerous? We're gonna skip past that word. This one here, I can't say it. Avaricious. The avaricious.
Yeah, because shorter, longer word for avarice.
Yeah, there we go. Bane of Bahamut, ruler of Avernus. Her portfolio or domain is of evil dragons, chromatic dragons, evil reptiles, and greed. She is a child of Io. Both she and Bahamut have an eternal rivalry. Toril, which is the setting of the material plane that you're supposed to be on, is the planet that seems to be one of the staging points of their conflict, which is why. So in the research, Tiamat and Bahamut, not greater deities, lesser deities, both of them. But I think in maybe some of the campaigns that have become more popular, and especially the Wizards of the Coast going into Tiamat, have kind of elevated these two beings into making them feel like they're stronger or higher beings of godhood than they actually are, because they're not that important elsewhere, but they feel important to our characters because the material plane that you're supposed to be playing on seems to be a staging point of their conflict of good and evil. So that's the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to feel like these two deities are super powerful because they're actively fighting against each other here. They have paladins fighting one another, and I think Joe Mongiello Mangialo. I can't remember how to say his name. But he guest starred on Critical Role, and he played a paladin oathbreaker of Tiamat, and I think that kind of like made Tiamat even bigger because he was a super dope paladin and helped the Critical Role cast in their first campaign. And I think that kind of brought Tiamat's fame up a little bit more.
Is it right in assuming that every dragon deity comes from, like, first of all, comes from Io, and then Bahamut and Tiamat is the jumping off point for all lesser dragons, or like legendary, any dragons a step below deityhood come from Bahamut and Tiamat, other than the other deities you mentioned?
I think they come from Io. Like
Okay.
any other deities, I believe, come from Io, and Bahamut and Tiamat are over just the regular dragons. And like I said, there are chromatic and metallic, but there's also more variations of dragons that I showed you. Like there's those astral, there's the planar dragons, there's gem dragons and things like that.
Do they all have their own deities?
I believe so.
Gotcha,
Which would
okay.
be where those other deities that I mentioned, where they would be coming from, or be coming from Io.
Forgive my ignorance. I've done very little research in D&D lore.
It is a lot, and honestly, if I get something wrong, oops, this is how I'm playing it.
There you go. Homebrew.
Yeah, exactly.
Gonna put the homebrew tag on this entire episode.
For real. So Tiamat is a 5-headed dragon. And like I said, over all the chromatic dragons, and it is very evil. There is a cult of the Dragon Queen, which are these people that are trying to free Tiamat from Avernus, where she has been banished to by other deities. And in the lore, different deities take credit for banishing Tiamat to Avernus. So it's kind of contradictory on who is the one that actually put Tiamat in Avernus. And Avernus is a level of hell.
Yes. What, hell or the
Abyss? I can't remember which one. I think it's Abyss.
I think it's Abyss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they didn't have devils weren't really part of the NPCs that were in that book, Descent into Avernus.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, there was like, yeah, there was a small section where there was devils. Anyway, whatever.
I gotta look it up right now
Google
before
it,
someone
yeah.
adds me. Tiamat is where?
It's gonna be crazy when we get this.
I misspelled Tiamat so bad.
Where is Avernus?
Where is Tiamat? Avernus, the first layer of the outer plane of Beator, also known as the Nine Hells.
It's also in near Cumae, Italy. It's an ancient name for a volcanic crater.
That's funny.
It's west of Naples, if you want to know. 2 miles in circumference. Moving on.
Yeah, so Tiamat takes pleasure in dragons doing evil stuff, and wants to get freed, and in my campaign has been freed. So, any other questions?
No, I think that's a good starting off point. Because we have, these are the surrounding major elements that and forces that you need to look into if you're going to be playing Io, Bahamut, or Tiamat. I think it'd be a really cool way to round this out if we get into the actual chromatic dragons.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we're going to look into maybe what is. Oh, I was like, my notes are gone. I just had them out of order. We're going to go into what is considered the most evil-tempered and vile of all chromatic dragons. We're heading towards skull dragons.
So it's part of the most evil part of Io, which is part of the most evil part of Tiamat. And now we are in the most distilled, most vile, disgusting animals in D&D, perhaps.
And I will tell you this right now. So again, AJ Pickett's videos, and I'm taking his story here because it shows now to me how to run an evil baby dragon, because this
that's
fucking
wild.
Dope. So introduction of the black dragon wormling. In D&D adventuring party just found a black dragon egg shortly after it hatches, and within moments of hatching, the dragon wormling has claimed its first victim, a defenseless old woman. black dragons have an acid breath. So it acid sprayed this old woman moments from hatching. Within days, the dragon was plundering the city and started to create a hoard of treasure. It created a killing spree that the adventuring party had to cover up. The wormling started to manipulate the players and the people of the city. The dragon began to raise family members of the party as skeletons, and within a few days, it took over the city. This creature was lethal from the moment it hatched because it was able to take over the city, and it manipulated the players by raising its dead family members up so that they had to fight them in overtaking this city. Wild. This is wormling level dragon. This is weak old dragon. Now, can you imagine now all the DMs, anyone's listening, run your dragons like this, because that's intimidating. That is wild.
And it's 3 generations or 3 steps away from Io, right? Like this is removed.
Yeah.
And baby form.
Mm-hmm.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Which totally changes my perspective on dragons. And it's like, not to say, because the dragons in our campaign were all blue, well, most of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they were all incredibly dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And each level we went up, it was even way more difficult to kill them, way more difficult to fight them. But they're blue; they're not black dragons.
And so imagine this: so blue dragons, just so people know, blue dragons are the only group of dragons that actually come together and can form a horde or a flock of dragons. Every other dragon has to fend for itself. So they become exponentially more dangerous because of that,
Yeah.
I think that's why I also made blue dragons. You're able to kill them, with your party versus one now, especially at this level. But like seeing a black dragon, this is going to be like, oh shit, we're in for a nasty, grueling fight right now.
Yeah. I'm getting that sense now.
So just a basic description of a black dragon. They have an abnormally slender appearance in comparison with the other chromatic dragons, although their picture doesn't really show them as being slender. And they have deep socketed eyes and a broad nasal opening. The black dragon's face resembles a skull because it has these 2 curving horns that move forward. The segmented horns are bone clear near the base and darkened to the dead black at the tips. Yeah. As the black dragon ages, right? So as it ages, this black dragon has a full face. The flesh around its horns and cheekbones deteriorate as though eaten by acid, leaving a thin layer of hide that enhances its skeletal appearance. So it's got a full flush dragon face. And as it continues to move and live longer, the face begins to get thinner and thinner and thinner. So if you fight a dragon that has a skull thin face, that is a very old dragon that you are fighting.
Wow, that's wild. I'm looking up pictures of this black dragon.
Mm-hmm.
There's some really cool ones.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're absolutely a terror. So black dragons are known in Draconic as Ruther Durastrix, which I believe means black dragon. In Draconic, they do prefer to live solitary lives. They are the most vile and most evil, so they are extremely aggressive and predatory. They are not loyal to or affectionate outside of whatever is needed to safeguard their offsprings or territory. One of the few questions that we kind of had on here is, what does their mating look like? So
kinky.
Oh yes, so kinky.
So much acid.
Yeah, right. Well, yes, actually. Females fight for the mate. So females will fight for the male's attention here, and then they'll lay their egg in the male territory. The dragons will protect their offspring, but they will give very little support to the wormling. Pretty much, they're just going to make sure it stays alive. But
for like the first day.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, obviously you saw the story of what a baby dragon will do, and they just want to make sure it stays alive and it isn't just like their lineage isn't immediately killed, but also they're going to start seeing him as a threat eventually, the incubation time is 480 days, so I mean, it's a lot of time that you're having to spend, so you at least want to make sure.
A year and a half.
Yeah.
I'm out of this off, don't at me.
No, you're right. You're right. I was like, that's like 3 years.
Yeah. A year and like 2 months.
Yeah.
3 months. I don't know. The more math I do,
Year
the
and a
worse
half.
it gets.
Year and a half. The baby egg requires being immersed in a pool of acid that takes 1d4 acid damage per round. So that is the acid that it needs to be in, and that's what makes it good. That's what you get good black dragon.
That's the right egg soup.
Yeah, exactly. Told you, lots of acid. When a black dragon hatches, okay, and this is what I thought was interesting in the lore and the mythos that you dropped in last episode, was whenever a dragon hatches, not just a black dragon, but whenever a dragon hatches, there is a surge of elemental or regional effects when the dragon is hatched.
Ooh,
So that would be super cool to play as well.
Sick.
Any type of dragon, a red dragon, boom, volcano. Gold dragon, something cool. So there are different, and if you look, each dragon in D&D has a regional effect. Just amplify that when one is hatched. Could you imagine fighting a black dragon and then the regional effects start getting even worse because there's a dragon that's about to hatch? Ooh.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean and that also ties into, like you said, the mythology of like these massive cataclysmic events are what we immediately assign to dragons. And it's like, well, in the game, you just know that. That it's like you feel an earthquake. It's like, damn, okay, dragon's born. This is gonna get so much worse. You know what I mean?
Could you imagine being the area around a brood of blue dragons, and it's just like storm. And it's like, this is the worst storm, and the people in that area are like, another one. Like, it's
time to pack up.
Yeah, well, it's like, oh, now the rule that we're under is going to be even stronger because now another dragon is going to be coming here. Now our taxes are going to need to be increased even higher. We're going to need to produce more food for these dragons, you know?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, every time you see a thunderstorm nearby that village, it's just like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's such a beatdown. Everybody gets so excited for rain, and then it's like, nope.
Yeah. That would be an interesting like area to be in, where it's like, oh, this place looks like it's, really needing some rain, and then it starts to rain, and you see like all the people in the town are like, fuck no, and like the adventuring party's like, oh yeah, it's rain. This is what you guys need. They're like, no, this is not what we need at all.
Yeah, or same thing with like an NPC that's like just moved to town. It's like one of your players is interacting with, and they're so sad when it rains. And they're like, what's going on with you? Like, and they're like, oh, I just got here. Like, it used to be bad, you know?
Yeah, that is interesting.
Like, it's such an interesting call to adventure of like,
yeah,
okay, this is a place we need to protect. Like,
or like, yeah, exactly. Like you said, an earthquake. What if it's like a evil copper dragon and there's an earthquake around it, and so anytime the ground shakes, this, as a quirk for your character is super scared.
So cool.
Yeah.
So many. Another rabbit hole. But yeah, world creation, you can already see there's so many things that you can do with this. It's so cool.
Yeah. So when the wormling hatches, and that's what you said, like, it should need a little bit of care. After the first hour of hatching, the wormling is ready to fight, fly, and reason as it inherits memories and information from its parents, although most of it is unused and unremembered until it is needed.
What?
But instinctually, they will know how to use basic hunting methods. Now, black dragons, also known as swamp dragons, their main method is to ambush their prey because they can breathe water, so they will lie in the bog, breathing water, and wait for its ambush. Wait for its prey in ambush.
So, like, they're leaching like acid into a bog for the first hour. It's like, the crazy amount of effect. Like, you have an hour to get to this thing. Like, that's nuts. Like, the amount of water that you have to wade through at 4 damage per turn.
Yeah, exactly.
For every 6 seconds. I mean, that's nuts. There's no way.
Exactly. They're just such dangerous creatures, and it gets me so excited to eventually one day run a black dragon. So black dragons will basically hunt as wormlings, fish, and rats, and which leads to an interesting world building element. The lair of the black dragon is going to smell terrible because there are going to be bloated and rotting rats and fish all in its lair, plus acid. Like, you just think of a little bit of like just the smell of fish, and if you're not like super like into raw fish, I guess. Like, it's not going to smell great. Can you imagine rotting corpses of dead animals? Like,
10-year-old dead fish soup made
Yeah.
out of acid.
yeah. And so I believe part of the regional effect of these black dragons is that drinking or eating anything in the area is extremely dangerous, and you have like the potential to either like take damage or get poisoned.
Wow.
Yeah. So not good there. We're gonna get into a little bit of their hunting tactics, right? So they love ambush hunting. They love ambush hunting so much that it drives their personality to lure in, trap, and sadistically murder other creatures.
Did they need that?
Oh yeah, for real. There's this style of hunting plus its intelligence give rise to a complex behavior that leads it to be very evil. Interesting note. When they talked about its intelligence, I think I would use this intelligence as more like a survival or a hunting type of intelligence, not like so much as a wizard's type of intelligence, because the highest intelligence of a black dragon is anywhere between 14 to 16. I believe an adult black dragon's intelligence in D&D is 14. Obviously, you can change that for your black dragon, which 14 doesn't seem super high as an intelligence, but use it how you want to use it. All dragons have the desire to dominate other creatures and prefer creatures to live only at the dragon's whim and fancy. Black dragons are definitely no exception to that. Black dragons know that humanoids, and we talked about this a little bit last episode, are highly social creatures and have a strong instinct to respond to each other. Therefore, this makes black dragons prefer to capture, torture, and use the victims as bait to lure in other humanoids.
Whoa.
Their favorite methods of torture are horrific, but not fatal. Very important. They like to strip the flesh off the creature's legs and then dangle them into a pool of acid while hanging them from a tree.
Oh my god. It's terrible. It's terrible.
Their second favorite method is disemboweling them
Oh
and
my God.
leaving the creatures with enough blood to survive.
These are like Vikings all of a sudden. What's going on?
Yep. The only way to potentially find favor with a black dragon temporarily, if you're in a situation where you're about to get tortured, is by betraying people, by giving names of the people you're betraying, so that the dragon can then go and hunt those people and psychologically mess with those people by yelling their names as it murders them.
Whoa. This is intense.
The ecosystem of the black dragon is twisted and wicked, if you couldn't tell.
Hey.
Two of the most common loyal
Races?
races that will support the black dragons are kobolds and lizard folk. Kobolds are fanatical and loyal to the dragons. Both the kobolds and lizard folk view dragons as divine beings, and this is kind of everywhere. All kobolds view all dragons as divine beings. In the case of black dragons, they revel in the evil of the dragon and exalt the acts of the dragonborn as a virtue to be praised. The dragonborn will have the kobold and lizard folk or dragonbolt. Wow.
Dragon Bold folk.
Okay.
It's
Reset.
okay. We've been talking this whole episode.
Yeah.
I mean, you have.
The black dragon will have kobolds or the lizard folk or the dragonborn that serve the black dragon, weeded out to make sure that they are the most ruthless, vile, and depraved chaotic servants. And the reason it wants them to be that, it's so when it inevitably hunts them, it'll be a fun hunt. Because it will kill its servants and continue to hunt them down.
Oh my gosh.
You have any
That's-
questions before we go into some stats
That's
for this
fantastic.
dragon?
Yeah, that's terrifying. I don't know how you could build a better, just awful ecosystem around, and I don't know. The lore around this is crazy terrible.
Believe it or not, I'm pretty sure I cut down a lot of the lore here.
Yeah, I know you're nerfing it for this, which is nuts.
Yeah. again, AJ Pickett's video, and countless others. I believe the Dungeon Cast did an episode on it. I didn't really get into that episode. There's more information in the monster manuals. There's more information in the Dragonomicon. There's more information on countless. I think Mr. Rex did a video, although I believe it's the shortest video of all his dragon videos because it's like 9 minutes. I was like, dang, he normally has like 30 or 40-minute videos on whatever topic. So it was a short video on black dragons, but it was short and to the point because these dragons are ruthless.
Nice.
Any other questions?
Well, I'm just gonna update the audience on the fact that we're not doing inspirations this week because we did it in part 1, first of all, and second of all, I forgot what I was gonna say. So, number 1, I was done. That's it. That's all I want to talk about. Number 1, we're not doing inspiration this week. Enjoy it. Here's some Black Dragon stats.
Okay, yeah. So we're going into just some of the stats because I know that whenever we talk about our monsters, that is also a big ask. Is could we go into some of the stats for them? So here we go. Real quick, adult. I'm looking at an adult black dragon. So an ancient black dragon will probably have a little bit higher AC, HP. Probably a little bit better stats, but for the most part, it's going to be the same. And then let's go ahead and see if we wanted to add any different twists. Now knowing the lore of these black dragons, like what is something that we would add in homebrew to these dragons? So real quick, we're going AC is 19. Hit points is 195 hit points. That's 17d12 plus 85. Speed is 40-foot flying speed, 80-foot swim speed. Oh, I'm sorry. 40-foot walking speed, 80-foot fly speed, and a 40-foot swim speed. Strength is a 23, Dex is a 14, Con 21, Intelligence 14, Wisdom 13, and Charisma 17. That is an interesting spread of stats right there. I would have thought Intelligence would have been higher, especially in its lore. It says its Intelligence is pretty high, and that is honestly the second lowest stat. So I might swap those around to where I have maybe the charisma a little bit higher or just bump up the intelligence. It's got its saving throws, Dex, Con, Wiz, and Charisma. It is obviously immune to acid. It has blind sight 60 feet, dark vision 120 feet, passive perception is a 21. That is quite a high passive perception. It means it's seeing a lot of stuff that's going around it. Interesting note. Dragons are dangerous, and when you're playing dragons as a DM, a dragon should know how many people are around it by hearing the heartbeats, because their enhanced abilities should allow them to hear the heartbeats of the people or the things around it. So it could know, maybe that's how you use... I'm stuck on my cord. Maybe that's how you use your blind senses. Within 60 feet, it can hear the heartbeats and just knows something is there. But interesting to throw out there. Black Dragon's amphibious. It has 3 legendary resistances. It has a multi-attack, which most dragons do. They have a bite, which does 2d10 damage plus 1d8 acid damage. I would bump that up. I would totally bump that acid damage up to probably higher than what the piercing damage is, especially given the lore of how much gross stuff is in the lair. Like, its breath weapon has got to smell terrible. Its teeth have to be dirty, and I would even give it something to like potentially poison someone with each bite because of how gross it is, or give them like some other condition to where it would make it even more difficult to fight after this dragon has bitten you. It has a claw attack, which does 2d6 plus 6 damage. Again, I would add some type of acid damage to that as well. It has a tail attack that does 2d8 plus 6 bludgeoning damage. It has a frightful presence, which each creature in the dragon's choice within 120 feet of the dragon aware of it must make a DC 16 saving throw or become frightened for 1 minute. It has an acid breath with a recharge of 5 or 6, and that makes a DC 18 dexterity saving throw or take 12d8 acid damage. Then we have legendary actions, which I think could be improved upon, are detect, tail attack, and wing attack. Wing attack is a pretty interesting one. Before we get into what we would homebrew for this, even more so on lair actions, The pool of water that the dragon can see within 120 feet surges outward in a grasping tide. Any creature on the ground within 20 feet of the pool must succeed on a DC 15 strength saving throw or be pulled up to 20 feet into the water and knocked prone. That the water is literally coming out to grab you. That is crazy.
Yeah. And it's also got acid in it, according to the lore, right? So it's like
Yeah.
as soon as you're in the water, you're taking that damage every turn.
Ooh.
Like, and I know we're not doing homebrewing yet. Sorry.
No,
I'm
go
getting
for it.
ahead,
Go
I'm
for it.
getting
Go
ahead.
for it. Go for it.
So the next lair action is a cloud of swarming insects, right? Which where most people are 3d6 piercing damage, right? But there's a Constitution save. For me, like the cloud of swarming insects is automatic. Like once you're
Yeah.
in there, it's so disgusting in there. Like there's gonna be bugs the whole time. So you're
Oh.
taking acid damage, at 1d4 every turn. You're taking bug damage every time. And then if
3d6. Ooh.
and if we're taking, if I know it's like brutal, but if we're fitting it to the lore, and then it should have a lair ability where it can call forward its servants, right?
Mhm.
So it's got like half eaten and half dissolved lizard folk and kobolds that are limping towards you. You know what I mean? And it's like you're adding acid damage to all their attacks because of
Yeah.
where they're at.
And then think about the first story that we heard. Like this dragon wormling was raising people from the dead. What if it's raising acid skeletons out from the pool? So it falls into a pool and then it's starting to fight. It's already grappled, not just by the water, but by the skeleton in there that's fighting it as well.
And to me, like it's a black dragon. Like to me, that puts anything within 120 feet of it into like dark vision or darker.
Mhm.
Like if you see the dragon, you're just barely seeing its form. You never see its whole
That's
thing.
cool.
You can make out its eyes sometimes. Make out enough to attack it maybe.
Yeah.
But like you never see its full form until it's dead.
That
Like-
is cool.
Like
That is really cool. Oh man, we didn't even get down to the regional effects. Fog lightly obscures the land within 6 miles of the lair. So what if there's
6 miles?
What there's
Oh
this
my
this
gosh.
fog here as well as the insects. So you're right. You just know the general direction of where this dragon is going to be at. We're gonna hit that last lair action before we go on to the rest of the regional effects. Magical darkness spreads from the point of the dragon chooses within 60 feet of it, filling a 15-foot radius sphere until the dragon dismisses it as an action, which you wouldn't do it, right? Or uses this lair action again, or dies. The darkness spreads around corners. A creature with dark vision can't see through the darkness, and non-magical light can't illuminate it. If any of the effects area overlap with the area of light created by a spell second level or lower, the spell that created the light is dispelled.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
So it's got a swarm of insects. It's got magical darkness that it's pushing in different places. It's got water that's pulling people in, and those are just on initiative count 20. If I were playing this, I would also say I would swap out a legendary action for a lair action as well, and give those a cost depending on how dangerous those are. And then we're talking about regional effects. The land within 6 miles of the lair takes twice as long as normal to traverse, since the plant growth is thick and twisted, and the swamps are thick with reeding mud and acid. So you're not even going into this fight 100%. No way.
That's nuts.
Water sources within 1 mile of the lair are supernaturally fouled. Enemies of the dragon that drink such water regurgitate it within minutes. And again, I would probably add some type of poison element to it.
Points of exhaustion.
Yeah,
Things like that. They're starting to add just by getting close enough. I'd say you probably at least take 1 point just getting there.
Yeah, dude. This is rough.
And then, like to me, like the last maybe like homebrew, but it's more like Call of Cthulhu is like I would add in a homebrew element of like psychic damage, basically. Like the closer you get, it's like you're not going to make it there completely sane, and then once you're there, the longer you're there and the more you interact with, it's like you're going to have to make saves to like save yourself psychically from going crazy.
Yeah,
Because it's like the frightening presence is obviously there. I mean, you'd have to be I don't know what you'd have to be to not take any psychic damage from this, but at a certain point I would say like the frightening presence becomes, if not permanent, like a certain D10 of days that it's like they have to run from that place, and then if they're still alive, and then heal for that many days.
What if it's got something that's like you can't heal whatever, like if you drink the water, you can't heal.
The rest of that day or
Yeah,
something.
or like
Dang.
you take temporary hit points away and you can't heal up to that point anymore. So like if you have to drink anything from the land or eat anything from the land, you're not just hurting yourself there in the moment, but your cleric literally or whatever spellcaster that's trying to heal you literally can't heal what's going on with your body.
This is starting to sound like the most brutal one shot ever. Like not a one shot, but like those. Like there's books like what's it called? It's a zombie book where it's basically 30 different journal entries
Mhm.
of the entirety of the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
And so you just check in with a bunch of different characters, and so it's almost like a campaign where like every time you come in with a different character until you
Yeah.
kill the dragon, and then you can start the rest of your campaign, right?
That's cool.
Like it's like they keep sending people up there, and it's like this completely obviously nuts dragon. And then once they finally kill it, then they can start their campaign with that character. Like that'd be such a cool way to start a campaign. Like,
That would be. And then the DM can just literally no holds bar, just go for it.
yes.
That's cool. Well, I think that's gonna wrap it up. We're at an hour
We
and,
went
and
hella
10
over.
minutes. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was super fun. Obviously you can tell in our voices the coffee is kicking in. I am really excited about this, first off, this year, and also these episodes. Dragons are pivotal to me as a creative. I've always been inspired by dragons, and so diving into this lore, while it was exhausting, it was also very rewarding and very fun to do this. So let us know what dragon you want to hear about or hear us talk about next. I think we pretty much hit the most ruthless, vile dragon first. So I mean, if you want to hear about the good dragons, we can talk about good shit too.
Yeah. We don't mind.
Yeah. We had plans to talk about red dragons in this episode, and as I started doing black dragons, I was like, there's no way I can also do red dragons.
That's
in
what
this
I was gonna
episode.
say. There's so much more that we didn't touch on, both
Yeah.
mythologically and in D&D. I mean, there's so much more you can do just in the world of within the mythology of dragons. It's
Mhm.
crazy,
Yeah.
and it took so much time to research. And one thing I was gonna say earlier, I finally remembered what I was gonna say is when you listen to podcasts on any platform, you'll notice how many times they cut. We film straight through. When I change cameras, it's in real time.
Yeah.
You'll see me reaching for my laptop to change cameras. It's in real time. So when you listen to other podcasts, they put a lot of time into editing and all that stuff. Not to say that, I'm proud of not spending time, but what I'm proud of is the fact that we were able to give you a good product when it's just stream of consciousness in the moment.
Mhm.
And we're able to put that out to you with all the effort that we, the more time that we save in filming is the more time that we spend in research. And so, consider we have a link on every episode for like supporting the podcast. You can do as little as 99 cents a month. We've got our merch. We've got our t-shirts, stickers, posters, and coffee cups, I believe, are in there too. Yes, they
Mhm.
are.
Yeah.
And that link is on our Instagram at Creative Thinker Podcast. So anywhere you find us, there's a way to help support the podcast. We are eternally grateful for that. Every little bit helps, and it helps us bring this content to you guys. So thank you so much for coming along, creative thinkers all across this little globe of ours. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.